Welcome back. We're here to review episode 3 of House of the Dragon, titled Second of His Name. So this episode picks up about 3 years after the last episode. We know this because at this point we see that Viserys and Alicent Hightower are now married. They have a 2-year-old son named Aegon, and she's also pregnant, very pregnant, with their second child. This is a name day event, which is essentially a birthday. We see that Viserys is very happy. It's a celebratory occasion. He finally has that son. Things have been progressing with him and Alicent, but we see that his relationship with Rhaenyra is strained. Obviously, we know at the end of the last episode, she was very upset to learn that he was marrying her best friend. He pissed a lot of people off because also Corlys had suggested that he marry his daughter. He made his own decision, and in doing that, made a lot of enemies. So this is a happy occasion. Now that he has a son, the assumption is that he's going to name his son his heir. We know that he named Rhaenyra his heir, but when he done that, she was his only child. He had no plans of remarrying. He needed to secure the throne. He was getting a lot of pressure, and he made the best decision at that time. Now that he has a son, things are a little shaky. We also see that Alicent and Rhaenyra are still at odds. You know, Rhaenyra was obviously pissed. We see a scene in which Rhaenyra is trying not to participate in the festivities, and she's sitting out under the Godswood tree, and Alicent comes out to her asking her to come inside, and it's clear that there's tension between the two of them. There's also this little weird moment where Rhaenyra, who's princess, tells the man who is singing to her to stop singing or to continue singing, and Alicent tells him to stop and leave them. And it's this weird moment of who does he listen to, because technically Alicent now outranks Rhaenyra as she is the queen, and we see a little power play there. I was shocked to see Alicent assert that, because clearly she is the queen, but you know, your friend is hurting. You know how she feels about this. So I don't know if that was a good time to trump her just in that moment. But, you know, overall, we see that Alicent does care a lot about Rhaenyra's feelings. And later on, when she has a conversation with Viserys about their son becoming heir, she doesn't want to see Rhaenyra get pushed out of her position. But she's also getting a lot of pressure, specifically from her father, the Hand of the King, Otto Hightower. So Rhaenyra comes back into the party, and we see that at this point, she's probably about 17 or 18, well past the age of being married in this time period. And her father is pressuring her. He's telling her, I've been getting a lot of requests for your hand. You know, it's time that you get married and you have kids. And she tells him, I don't want to have any children. I don't want to get married. And this looks like a typical father-daughter conflict or tension. I mean, nothing that you wouldn't see in, 2022. But this is bigger than just her being a bratty teen. This is more about, she has a lot of unresolved feelings. I think she's still angry about what happened to her mother, knowing that it was her father's decision that led to her mother's death. So she's still upset about that. She is wondering and nervous that she's going to be unseated as the heir. She's still upset that her father chose to marry her best friend. She lost her friend in this. So, I mean, she's had a lot of loss lately. She lost her mother, and they seem to be very close. And she's lost her best friend. Now it seems like she really has nobody to talk to. We do see later that her and Sir Criston Cole have developed some type of a friendship and rapport. But outside of that, she seems very lonely. So one of the first men, so we get to see a little bit of the Lannisters, and if you're a Game of Thrones fan, the Lannisters play a huge part in the story, and they are an interesting house. She's being pursued by Jason Lannister, who also happens to be a twin with Tywin Lannister, who sits on the King's Small Council. And so it's just an interesting nod to another set of twins within the Lannister house. Remember, in Game of Thrones, we had Jaime and Cersei, who were twins. And, Jason is very arrogant, and that seems to be very much in line with the Lannisters. Even the way that he shoots his shot with her, he's arrogant. It's almost as if he knows it's a done deal. He just keeps boasting about how great Casterly Rock is. And, he's just very, very proud and arrogant. And while it added a little bit of humor to this episode, it only did, all it did was anger Rhaenyra even further. She goes back to talk to her father, and they have it out. He tells her, "You're of age, it's time," and that even he is not above his duty, that there's just some things that all of us have to do, and he as the king has had to do things he don't want to do, so she needs to fall in line. And they have a little bit of a screaming match, and she runs off. In addition to Jaime Lannister, there are some other folks who people believe might be a good match for her. So Otto Hightower makes a suggestion, which is quite interesting. He suggests to King Viserys that he betroth Rhaenyra to her little brother, Aegon, who is all of 2 years old. Viserys laughs it off, but he only laughs it off because the child is so young, and not because they're brother and sister, because that was very common with the Targaryens. They often married their siblings to keep the bloodline pure and to make sure that, all of their descendants derived from Targaryen blood, so on and so forth. So it's not uncommon. Otto says, if obviously the kid is only 2, it would be a long time before they could get married, but it would stop all the other pursuers. And that's a good point. It would. If they believed that she was betrothed, then all of that would stop. Now, how does Rhaenyra feel about that? Probably wouldn't like it. And I don't know if it's because it's her brother or because she just simply doesn't want to get married. But it kind of does make sense. This way, you're kind of keeping it in the family. I mean, even Viserys's mother and father were brother and sister. So this was just commonplace at the time. So that's one suggestion. Another suggestion comes from one of Viserys's other counselors, and he suggests that he marry her to Laenor, who is Lord Corlys's son. And you'll remember previously he suggested that King Viserys marry Laenor, who is Lord Corlys's daughter. And those are they share blood, they share a bloodline, they all hail from old Valyria. His suggestion would solve a lot of issues. Number one, House Valyrian is extremely powerful and extremely wealthy. It would be good to have them as an ally. It would also smooth this conflict that exists now between Viserys and Corlys because he refused to marry his daughter. They all share a bloodline. They're closer in age. It could solve a lot of issues. Again, the problem is Rhaenyra is probably not down with that. But these aren't horrible choices. And later on, we're going to see where Viserys and Rhaenyra have a really good conversation in which he tells her that she can choose her own husband, but she just needs to choose somebody. So Rhaenyra runs off on her horse in an act of defiance. Sir Criston Cole goes after her, and finally he catches up to her, and they have a moment. She talks, and this is probably her only confidant at this point, and she tells him how she feels about being forced to marry and possibly being unseated, and all the things that are going through her mind right now. Simultaneously, the part of the plan for this event is to have a royal hunt, and King Viserys is told that there has been a sighting of the White Hart. The White Hart is a stag, which is a symbol of divine royalty. And when it's sighted, it's seen as an omen of some sort. So the thinking here is that this is the name day of the king's possible heir. And seeing this animal on the same day could imply that Aegon is the heir and he is next in line to the throne, to just kind of solidify what people are already thinking. This causes a problem for Viserys because he's already having all of this internal turmoil and conflict about what he should do. And having this happen, all it does is just kind of fuel the fire and have people sit in his ear telling him that this is a sign of what needs to be done, and just adding more pressure to him. They finally catch up with it, or so they think, and they find a stag, and it's actually not the white hare. It's just a normal stag. And so, for the purpose of ceremony, they capture it, and they're going to have King Viserys murder it as part of this ceremony. But this is not the White Hart. Viserys knows this. I mean, everybody knows it, but it's like, we're here, time, place, everything. Let's just catch this one and let's just make a whole thing of this. And he kills it with a spear that Jason Lannister had gifted him. And the first time he stabs at him, he doesn't kill him, and then the second time he does. But I think that this moment for Viserys was just kind of confirmation that he needs to stay true to what he promised Rhaenyra, because this is not a sign that Aegon, who although he is his firstborn son, should be named his heir. And I think there's a little bit of relief for him internally in realizing that the stag that they caught is not in fact the White Hart. Because if it was, then I think he might start leaning towards, well, maybe everybody is right and maybe I need to rethink my decision. So he kills the stag. Ironically, while Rhaenyra is out with Sir Criston Cole, she comes across the White Hart. And to me, that is a symbol that she, in fact, is true heir of the Targaryen dynasty. I think it was a symbolic moment to reaffirm what her role in this realm should be. She is, in fact, to be the Queen of Westeros. It's becoming evident how much all of this is weighing down on Viserys. I mean, he's got a lot on his plate right now. I'm sure he's still mourning the death of his wife, knowing that, in essence, he's the reason for her death. His daughter's in a bad place right now. His brother is on the outs. He's in the stepstones fighting. He's a constant problem and a thorn in his side, and he just kind of never knows what to expect from him or what's going to be next. Lord Corlys is pissed with him. They have this war or battle going on in the Stepstones that he is tangentially involved in, and you see that he's not sure, or he's refusing to send aid because of the way that his brother and Lord Corlys went about this, and he doesn't want to cause a war. But that's something that's weighing on him, and there are people who are in his ear urging him to send aid, and he's wondering and implying that it says something about the crown that he hasn't. So he's got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stress, and we can see it's starting to take a toll on him. We know that he's not in great health. We saw in episode 1 that he had some kind of sore on his back that wouldn't go away. At this point, we see that he's missing 2 fingers. He's drinking a lot more. His health is declining, and a lot of this probably has to do with all the stress that he's dealing with. He and Alicent have a conversation, and Alicent seems like the one thing in his life that brings him joy, and I guess now his son as well. And, she is definitely supportive. She seems to have his best interest at heart. Her father is in her ear, though, urging her to urge Viserys to name their son the heir. She doesn't want to do that. She's still loyal to Rhaenyra. But, of course, that's her son. Why wouldn't she want to see him be king? And she also doesn't want to add any more stress to her husband. But they have a really good conversation where he breaks down, and it's probably the most vulnerable he's able to be, because he has to maintain a role of authority and power in front of everybody else. And this allows him one space where he could actually be vulnerable. And, he almost breaks down in tears, and he tells her that he named Rhaenyra so that he could protect the realm from Daemon, because he knows what his brother is and how volatile his brother is. He also talks about a dream that he had of a male child wearing a crown. And he was obsessed with this dream for years and years. And that obsession is probably what led him to push his wife, Emma, to keep having children. Because we know that she had a lot of miscarriages and stillbirths because she felt a duty to provide him with a male heir. And he probably pressured her on some level, and he's feeling like that pressure is what ultimately killed her. And in line, that killing her also created this dissension between he and his daughter. He thought that naming Rhaenyra his heir would absolve his regret, because he never thought he would have a son. He never thought that he would get remarried, and now he has. And now everything is just all upside down. And you can see he is in flux, and he is so confused, and he doesn't know if he made the right decision. Should he listen to what everybody else is telling him to? Should he follow his heart? Should he honor what he said to his daughter? I mean, there's clearly a lot of conflict going on, and it's playing itself out on him physically. In his conversation with Alicent, she reads the letter that he received, which is requesting aid for the war in the Stepstones. And Alicent offers him some really good advice and tells him that he should send aid. While she understands the conflict between he and his brother, it's probably better off that they handle this situation with the Triarchy, because if his brother and Corlys were to lose, this is an issue he's going to have to deal with later anyway. So put aside your feelings, your misgivings, and send the aid so that they can end this war, which he does. Now, things are going really bad in the Stepstones. They have been fighting this battle or this war for 3 years now, and they are losing to the Crabfeeder. You would think because they have the dragons that this would have been an easy defeat, but what happens is every time the dragons come out, the Triarchy just retreats to a cave and they can't get to them. And this has been their technique, or this has been their strategy for the last couple of years. So they have a situation where their soldiers are retreating. There's a lot of attrition. They're low on supplies. They're losing ships. It's just not looking good. And they're blaming Daemon, or at least Daemon is. The talk is that Daemon has been pushing the troops a little too far. And then there's a point where they're wondering, well, if the king won't support Daemon, then why should we support Daemon? And they probably believe that if Daemon and the king weren't at odds, the king probably would have sent aid already and they wouldn't be losing this war. So they're losing their faith in him. Or at least Daemon is, and it sounds like he's trying to get others to fall in line with what he believes. As they talk about a strategy, they recognize that they're going to need to send somebody out into this open pit in order to draw the Triarchy out. And this person would essentially be a sacrificial lamb, because anybody who goes out there is going to be murdered. But this is what they need to do. And the question is, who could they possibly send? Nobody is going to agree to this. It's clearly a suicide mission. As they're talking about the strategy, Daemon rolls up and he receives a letter from the king in which the king has agreed to send aid. This is where the scene gets really good, because if you'll notice, from the time Daemon arrives, he doesn't say one single word. It's all action from this point out. It wasn't until I watched the episode twice that I realized this. He gets the notice from the soldier. He reads it. It pisses him off. He beats the shit out of the soldier. You know, it's a classic case of don't shoot the messenger. And for him, this was a light bulb moment. And this is why Daemon is so self-destructive, because he will cut his nose off to spite his face. Now, his brother is ready to send troops. They're finally going to get the support they need. And rather than accept his brother's help, he decides and takes it upon himself that he is going to take matters into his own hands. So what he does is he paddles out to the island. He walks into this open pit. He grabs a white flag and he waves it as a sign of surrender. He gets down on one knee. He holds up his sword. So he's giving the impression to the Triarchy that they are surrendering. This gesture draws them out. We see the Crabfeeder. He's standing at the entrance of one of the caves, a little curious as to what's going on. The Triarchy comes out the cave. They walk up to him. They're obviously skeptical, but they see him on his knee with his sword in his hand, and they approach him. They go to take the sword out of his hand, and as soon as one of them is distracted, he pulls a dagger out and he stabs. And then he just goes on this suicide mission in which he's just fighting any and everybody he comes across. And he's doing extremely well. I mean, this is a scene where you kind of have to suspend reality, because obviously there's no way that Daemon would have gotten that far just out there by himself. I mean, it was very superhero-ish where, you know, as they come out one by one, he takes them down, you know, especially since they had all of the other soldiers who had the bows and arrows who were above. I mean, clearly one of them, I mean, they ended up striking him towards the end, but like he wouldn't have made it this far, but it made for a great scene. And we saw how great of a warrior Daemon is. I mean, his hand-to-hand combat skills are unmatched. And it might be because Daemon is a little crazy, right? He's definitely off, you know, and this is mainly the reason why Viserys did not want him to be his heir, because he's impulsive and he's rash, and he doesn't seem to make good decisions. Now, while this looks like it's going to be the end of Daemon, and we know it's not, right, because he's an important part of the show, but he gets hit with a couple of arrows. He crawls into this one space where he is a little protected from the rest of them, and it looks like it's going to be the end for him. And it looks like this was something that he was comfortable with. Like, he went into this knowing that he could possibly die, and he didn't care. Just at the moment when they start to surround him, we see the cavalry come in, and we see the sea snake and all of the rest of them have come to save the day. It turns into an all-out battle in which Lord Corlys gets the upper hand. We also see, which was an interesting touch, we see the dragon above. And at first it was like, wait, if Daemon's down here, well, who's on the dragon? And we see that it is Rhaenys. And Rhaenys, while he is Lord Corlys' son and he is a Valyrian, his mother is Rhaenys, who is a dragon, or who I should say is a Targaryen. So it would make sense that he's a dragon rider. And he comes out with his dragon, and he calls out Jacaerys, and they're blowing fire on all of the Crabfeeder's men. And it looks like there's going to be a success. Daemon takes this opportunity to go and chase the Crabfeeder in that cave. We don't see what happens, but we do see him come out later, all bloody, dragging the Crabfeeder's torso. So this was a huge success. The war is won with this one scene. And we'll see next week that Daemon is going to be celebrated and congratulated and rewarded for this by being named the King of the Narrow Sea. He did an excellent job. I mean, he made it happen. Now, did he know that this is how it was going to play out? I mean, it just seemed like it was the perfect storm of events. But you get the sense in the very beginning that he was going in there just out of spite, to spite his brother, to say that I don't need your help, and to make a move, recognizing that he was losing the confidence of the people. But it all worked out in the end, and the Crabfeeder is defeated, and all is well. So that wrapped up the episode. Again, another good one. It's really interesting how they're doing these time jumps, and normally I don't like that, but I think it makes sense in this place. And even though we are seeing years pass, I think the continuity of the show is still there. And because there's just so much to cover, I understand why they need to do it. Daemon is the actor is amazing. And while we should hate Daemon because he's 730, I really, I mean, I don't know how you can't like him. Like, you know, I can't see how he's not a fan favorite. I mean, he's definitely dope. Good episode. So it's hard to get a sense of what's happening next week. I watched the preview. It seems like it's a little bit all over the place. But I'm looking forward to it. Let me know what you thought about this episode, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.